Wonder Woman 1984 was one of the most eagerly anticipated movies in the year 2020. This was because of the high popularity of the first movie, which was considered one of the best additions to the DCEU in modern history. Also, because of, the lack of movies being released in 2020 due to the pandemic. After continuous delays and months of anticipation, we finally got treated to the second installment of Wonder Woman, and it was, not that great. Fans were bewildered after the movie failed to reach their expectations, and fell short of the aura the original movie had created in 2017. In this video, we're going to take a look at 5 things that made audiences feel like walking out of their own houses when watching Wonder Woman 1984. Number 1. The treatment of the villains. It's no surprise that the execution and treatment of Pedro Pascal's Max Lord and Kristen Wiig's Cheetah were a letdown for many viewers. At the beginning of the movie, Barbara Ann Minerva started off as a nerdy sidekick to Diana at the Smithsonian Institution in DC. It was somewhat easy to feel bad for her since she was majorly overlooked and cast aside by the great Diana Prince. Somewhat similar to Jamie Foxx's origin story for the character Electro in the Amazing Spider-Man franchise. But the execution of a character from this simple and humble woman to a cheetah trying to fight off Diana was so bland and predictable. There was nothing we haven't seen a million times over, and it didn't make us care for the character. In fact, the majority of her character development were her outfit changes. She went from a simple everyday woman and slowly started looking more and more like an actor from the Cats musical. By the end of the movie, she even managed to transform herself into an actual cheetah. Although this did make for some fun action scenes between her and Diana, there was really nothing memorable about the character. As for Pedro Pascal's character, Maxwell Lorenzano, aka Max Lord, the motives and rationale behind his actions were not hard to believe. Just like Diana and Barbara, he too wanted to use the Dreamstone for his own personal agenda, but he did want to create chaos and destruction, and worldwide instability. So, okay, maybe not as relatable as Barbara's character, that is, before she turned into a cat. Max Lord's characterization as someone who tried to dupe people by investing in his failing oil company was a believable and somewhat grounded origin story for a villain. But as the plot moved forward, Pedro's performance came across more goofy and very over the top. There was a lot that was set forth that they could have worked with, but in the end he just came across as a very one-dimensional villain who could have been so much more, if only the creators had dived more into the nitty-gritty. Perhaps focusing more on his relationship with his son, instead of just using him as a plot device to create some emotional depth for the villain, did not help in the character's all-around development. Number 2. The screenplay. It's no surprise that the screenplay of Wonder Woman 1984 was not exactly a work of art. When it comes to superhero movies, films tend to focus on the characterizations and the proper adaptation of characters, along with a good blend of CGI and good casting choices. But a well-written screenplay is a very crucial factor that determines the success of any film. After watching Wonder Woman 1984, it's pretty evident that this screenplay doesn't give much competition to the likes of Aaron Sorkin, Alfred Hitchcock, and other famous screenwriters. With a compulsive need for superhero films to bring out the funnies from time to time, better known as the Marvelization of superhero films, this film tries too hard to enter a niche they don't really belong in. Although some scenes from the original movie did provide much needed breathers and funny moments, Wonder Woman 1984 tries to overcompensate the screenplay due to a lack of proper character moments and payoffs. The movie also falls victim to a very noticeable tool that many writers tend to rely on: exposition. The expository scenes pull you away from this great world that has been created, and almost feels like a documentary where we're being hand-fed information that the creators want us to notice and remember. With the hinted return of Diana's boyfriend before Wonder Woman 1984 released, fans were eager to see how he would be worked back into the story. The execution, though, was far from ideal. After learning that Steve Trevor took the identity and soul of another living man just so Diana could reunite with him seemed very confusing and odd to say the least. But what was really weird was the lack of clarity from the creators to justify this action. A woman who puts her life on the line time and time again for the betterment of humanity doesn't have a problem when a man's identity's been stolen? This seems even more out of place when we hear the long speech by Diana telling Max what his wish had caused the world to become. This makes it come across as hypocritical more than anything. Anywho, at least fans got to see Chris Pine's killer smile and dashing good looks again. Makes up for all the identity stealing, I suppose. Number 3. The timing of the movie. Although this may sound like a far-fetched theory and point for debate, but the ongoing pandemic did not help the reception of Wonder Woman 1984. After being delayed time and time again, we finally got to see the long-awaited sequel to a magnificent origin film for one of DC's most loved superheroes. Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot were very excited to finally share their latest installment of Wonder Woman on the big screen, and HBO Max on December 25th, but it was kind of a letdown. One of the reasons, along with poor storyline, compared to the 2017 installment, was the timing. After the COVID-19 pandemic caused theaters and movie halls worldwide to shut down, viewers waited months and months only to see some of the biggest blockbusters of the year to be delayed. With Marvel's Black Widow also being pushed back to 2021, Wonder Woman 1984 had no competition whatsoever by the time it took audiences by storm. A storm of lambasting, that is. Every moviegoer during the Christmas and holiday period had to choose between watching Wonder Woman 1984 and Pinocchio. Now, I've got nothing against the cultural icon that is Pinocchio, but for the sake of rationale and reasoning, I've assumed people would prefer to watch a movie as big as Wonder Woman on the big screen after 8 months of binge-watching The Office on Netflix. Without any competition, all eyes were on the much-awaited DCEU blockbuster, and people couldn't help but bash the movie after having such high expectations. With not much to offer and no other Fast and Furious movies available in the market, Wonder Woman 1984 had to bear the brunt of criticism and negative reviews. Now, this does not mean that Wonder Woman by itself is a good standalone movie. Just that the timing of the movie and the continuous delays did not help deflate the reception, which only made fans more eager and thus more disappointed. Number 4. The excessive length. Coming in at a whopping 151 minutes, Wonder Woman 1984 sure did give the likes of the Avengers Endgame a run for their money. But unlike Endgame, this movie wasn't the culmination of a 10+ year story arc. And neither was it a movie where you had to fit in a bajillion characters. I couldn't help but feel that this movie overstayed its welcome in terms of on-screen time. 2 hours is more than enough time to focus heavily on the plot while leaving enough room for set pieces. Instead, we got a nearly 3-hour-long slogfest, where not much was happening apart from Diana looking to the stars reminiscing about her time with Steve during the events of the original film. And in that moment, we were all Diana, wondering why the film couldn't be as good as the one from 3 years ago. Although the first hour was easier to digest than the rest, Patty Jenkins could have done without the 2 intro set pieces. The film took us back to the land of the Amazonians competing in their version of the Olympics. This scene did remind me of a classic cult movie. The only thing missing was a flying wizard on a broomstick. While the original Wonder Woman film's deep dive into Themyscira was crucial for the origin story and very important to the ongoing plot, this intro felt way too prolonged. The creators probably wanted to give us a glimpse of the Amazonians again, since it was very visually pleasing and one of the best parts of the original film. But in Wonder Woman 1984, they could have worked with a shorter intro, given how much this movie had to cover. In fact, Patty Jenkins herself wanted the intro to be shorter, but went with it anyways. This movie also faced the burden of fitting in 2 villains. Max Lord in particular took a big chunk of screen time, and it wasn't even all that exciting. Although a truly remarkable actor, Pedro Pascal's over-the-top performance had all flash and no substance. By the end of the movie, we really had no connection to the villain, and although the ongoing theme of doing the right thing was a point of discussion over and over again, we can't help but think this motto was not used while deliberating the runtime of Wonder Woman 1984. Number 5. Diana's character arc. A movie is only as good as its main character. No matter how fancy the plot or the action, a good movie needs to have an active character who directly affects the plot in a major way. In the first Wonder Woman movie, we got to see how a naive and young yet extremely strong and courageous woman was pulled outside of her comfort zone. Diana was introduced to a completely new world outside of the walls of Themyscira. While her origin movie broke all the barriers and portrayed a strong female character in the center of it all, the second one felt like a parody of, what if Wonder Woman was a rom-com? The main character was hell-bent on reminiscing about her dead boyfriend, despite the fact that it's been more than 50-something years. Although she got her usual quota of beating up bad guys and looking badass while doing it, why was Chris Pine's character given so much screen time? The character who was just revived into the body of another man and had no superhuman strength whatsoever was repeatedly helping our protagonist out, saving her from tough situations and being her rock. It's pretty laughable how Diana's goals have changed from saving the world and defeating the God of War to I want my dead boyfriend back. Her relationship with Barbara was one of the few meaningful scenes we got showcasing character interaction and development. But after the return of Steve, that storyline had little to no focus and the stakes were little to none and painfully predictable. By the time we actually got to see the showdown between the girl-turned-cat versus the title character of the movie who had a 5-film contract left to complete, she barely had any screen time. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. From an amazing entry to revive a somewhat failing DCEU franchise to a somewhat forgettable slogfest, Wonder Woman 1984 is not a movie that will be remembered for the right reasons. With Gal Gadot already confirmed to have signed a 3-film contract for Wonder Woman, we can only hope that the concluding film to this trilogy gives us a glimpse of what we're fortunate enough to see from the first installment. So, what did you think of the movie? Did you agree or disagree with our gripes? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out some of our other videos.